Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're on a very specific, highly focused mission. We are building the ultimate master revision guide to help you unpack the explosive history of the British Mandate. If you've got an exam coming up on this topic, well, you're absolutely in the right place. To really wrap our heads around the history we're covering today, we're going to use a pressure cooker metaphor. We'll be looking at how specific historical ingredients, namely migration, competing nationalisms, and eventual revolts, all combined inside a sealed pot to create an incredibly volatile environment. Here's your study checklist for today. 1. The big revision question. 2. Your key history terms. 3. The pressure of migration. 4. Rising tides of nationalism. 5. The timeline to the revolt. And 6. A final exam prep review. So grab your mental highlighters and let's get into it.
Section 1. The big revision question. Focus on the exam.
All right, this right here is the absolute core question to keep in mind. Honestly, if you can answer this comprehensively, you've totally mastered the topic. Remember that pressure cooker I mentioned? Imagine the British Mandate is a sealed pot sitting on a hot stove. We're about to see how migration acted as the heat, how competing nationalisms became the expanding steam, and how the revolt was, well, the inevitable explosion when the pressure just got to be too much. Keep that visual in your head as we move forward.
Section 2. Your key history terms. Consider this your toolkit.
First up is the pot itself, the Mandate. This was the system set up after the First World War that gave Britain the authority to govern Palestine. It's absolutely crucial to remember that this wasn't just your standard traditional colony. It was a temporary trusteeship. And frankly, it dropped the British right in the middle of a deeply, deeply complex regional dynamic.
Next ingredient, Zionism. For your revision notes, you want to define this clearly as the ideological movement driving the search for and the support of a secure national home for Jewish people. This is the primary catalyst that really kicks the demographic shifts we're about to study into motion. And finally, nationalism. This acts as the steam building up inside our pot. Nationalism is that profound belief that a group of people with a shared identity, culture, and history should have their own self-determination, their own political control and government. The wild thing about the Mandate is that you have two very distinct, incredibly powerful nationalist movements, Jewish and Palestinian Arab, occupying the exact same geographical space. Section 3. The pressure of migration. Time to add the heat. Let's move from definitions to the hard data, because this statistical leap is just staggering. If there is one single statistic you memorize for your exam today, make it this one. Between 1918 and 1947, under the British Mandate, the Jewish population in the region skyrocketed from just 6% to a massive 33%. That is a gigantic demographic shift over just a few short decades, fundamentally altering the societal makeup of the entire territory. And it wasn't spread out evenly either. Notice how this European immigration was heavily concentrated. Migrants were specifically entering through the port city of Jaffa and settling near Jerusalem. Because of this localized concentration, these demographic changes weren't just some abstract national statistic. They were intensely felt on a day-to-day, neighborhood-by-neighborhood level, right in key political and economic hubs. So what was driving all of this? When analyzing the causes for this migration in your revision, it's vital to remember that this movement wasn't random, and it wasn't driven solely by the ideology of Zionism. It was urgently driven by the severe, literally life-threatening reality of European persecution. Put a big star next to 1933 in your notes. With Hitler coming to power in Germany, the search for safety and security became a desperate necessity. It created a massive surge in the numbers of people needing sanctuary. We always have to humanize the data, right? These were real families arriving with whatever belongings they could carry, seeking refuge from unimaginable danger. But looking at it from a big picture, historical perspective, the sheer volume of their arrival fundamentally altered the regional landscape. And naturally, that sparked a really complex new layer of tension with the existing population. Which brings us to Section 4, Rising Tides of Nationalism or Building Steam. This is where the heat of migration transforms into intense political pressure. As migration surged, so did land purchases to make room for the new arrivals. And as land ownership changed hands, Palestinian Arab opposition grew immensely. This pushback didn't come out of nowhere. It was born from a very genuine fear for their future, their territory, and their political survival. This dynamic acted as a massive catalyst, really solidifying Palestinian Arab nationalism as they fought to protect their shared identity and control over the territory. Now, to structure an excellent exam response, you've got to show how both communities organize their political aims. This contrast is perfect for that. On one side, you have the Jewish Agency, founded in 1929, completely dedicated to supporting and developing a Jewish homeland. On the exact opposite side, forming in response by 1936, you have the Arab Higher Committee, aimed squarely at opposing British policy and halting that increased immigration. You essentially have two completely opposed agencies operating under a single government. The steam in our pressure cooker is expanding rapidly now.
Section 5, Timeline to the Revolt, the boiling point.
Following a clear chronology is the secret to a high-scoring history essay. You can literally see the pressure mounting year by year here. We start in 1921, with early violence erupting in Jaffa directly over migration. Jump to 1929, the Jewish Agency creates structured support for a homeland. Then 1933, the tragic catalyst of Hitler coming to power drastically accelerates the migration. By 1936, the Arab Higher Committee is formed to organize opposition. And then the pressure just can't be contained anymore. From 1936 to 1939, it explodes into the Arab Revolt. The Arab Revolts was the inevitable whistleblowing on our historical pressure cooker. Spanning from 1936 to 1939, this was a major uprising demanding outright independence and strict limits on Jewish migration. It presented a direct physical and political challenge to British rule, proving exactly how incredibly difficult the mandate had become to govern.
Let's bring it all home. Section 6, Final Exam Prep Review, tying it together. To perfectly answer that big exam question we introduced at the very beginning, check out this quote. It beautifully synthesizes the chain reaction of cause and effect we just explored. If you need a thesis statement, look no further. Migration doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It alters population patterns, think back to that 6 to 33% stat. It changes land ownership, which directly creates economic competition. And all of that fundamentally shatters expectations about who actually gets political control over a territory. It is the ultimate domino effect. So, as you study and outline your essays, I want you to keep this final thought in mind. Look at the incredibly precarious balance the British were trying to strike, managing a desperately urgent search for safety from Europe on one hand, while facing a fierce, highly organized defense of existing land and identity on the other. Was this political pot destined to boil over from the very beginning? Chew on that question as you review your notes. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep those key terms and dates sharp, and best of luck with your revision.